Good evening, good day, and everything in between. Welcome to the first episode of the Attach and Pass podcast. My name is TBG Jake, and joining us for the cast is our lovely guests. We'll start with Nicole, who placed 62nd in Puerto Rico this past weekend. And then we'll pass on to Nikki, who placed 75th in Puerto Rico this past weekend. And we have our host, Courtney, who's going to be talking to these lovely people and asking them questions. Today we are going to talk about the Puerto Rico Regionals, the most recent Champions League of the past weekend, and overall thoughts about the upcoming meta and the changes that we will be playing with. Take it away, Courtney.
Indeed. Well, welcome everybody. This is a great time for us. Where the majority of like half the people in this call have just landed off of taking a pretty, I would say, successful tournament placements. I sadly was not there because as much as I stream, I am one broke girl. So we let the competitiveness go to the people who actually deserve it. I do want to talk about exactly how these two went. I do want to just more or less ask, like, how would you feel about the regional overall and how you both um, played into its meta? And were there any fun matches or any interesting bouts you had?
You want to go first, Nicole?
Yeah. So I ended up playing Snorlax stall. I ended up placing 62nd, so top 64. I was quite fortunate to bubble into that. Was not guaranteed by any means, but I ended up in the final round. I got paired into somebody who was 3-1-3, so I ended up beating them, and that really helped my resistance a lot, I think, and just enough to squeak in. But I mean, I had a great time. Granted, I didn't day two, which is the goal. But I also hit 100 points because, again, top 64. And even if I placed day two, I mean, the person who bumped me out of day two ended up placing top 64 as well. So I'll take the points. Very fortunate with that. But I'm definitely we'll get more in depth, but I definitely did not love my performance. I think there was a lot to improve on. But there was also a lot I learned, and also like off days happen. It's just unfortunate when it's on, a day that you're performing at a major. But still ended up with a fortunate result, and couldn't have done it in a more beautiful place, to be honest.
No, I definitely agree. No, Puerto Rico was beautiful. I want to say that first. Like, I got 75th, and that's fine with me. I played Lugia to the tournament, and it was my own whack build of Lugia. And I'll get more into why I decided to play that later on. But Puerto Rico, absolutely beautiful. I gotta say. And Courtney, you said you're broke. Puerto Rico's a pretty cheap trip, honestly. So the only reason it was more expensive was because it fell on Valentine's Day, I'm pretty sure. So it was it's such a beautiful place. And I had gone 4-2-2 at the tournament. It was so fun, honestly. I hit so many skilled opponents that I felt like my own skill expression was being tested in ways I've never had happen before. And yes, I wanted to day two, but I took 80 points out of that. And honestly, I couldn't be more happy that I got into 75th. So it was honestly just, to me, very successful. And yeah, Puerto Rico was just the perfect place to be there, honestly.
That sounds good. Yeah, I sorry.
I'm glad you brought up the skill in the room. Essentially, that was, I know, like, a common perception is that the special events are kind of like a point farm, right? And I'm sure sometimes that can be true. This was my first special event, but I will be honest, like I don't think I played against a bad opponent. I don't think there was any sort of nothing felt free, honestly. When I
I agree with
misplayed, I
that.
was punished, and when I played well, I was able to be successful, but it was never free. Even in good matchups,
Yeah.
Snorlax, being very polarizing, at times in its matchups. I should mention, I didn't mention my record. I went 5-3, um, and I ended up losing to a Lugia, to Dragapult, and to Roaring Moon EX with Pecharunt, which that's a given in that matchup. Um, but point being, like the spread on my losses alone indicates not only was there a diverse room, but I think anybody who played in that room would agree that there was a skilled room too. Nobody there was really messing around, and honestly, at some regionals you get casual players, and like that's fine. They're allowed to compete, but I don't think you're fighting for a special event spot if you're a casual player, and I certainly did not hit a casual player at that event. Um,
I
Yeah.
definitely have to agree with that.
yeah,
Yeah, I've been seeing posts recently about that, about how people think special events are just kind of CP farms, and most most good players will tell you they are not.
yeah,
That was
no,
the most difficult regional I've ever done. That was difficult.
yeah. I mean, I definitely, like I mentioned, like I didn't love my performance there, but it was very. I have made like misplays here and there at regionals, and I mean, like I don't know if I was ever punished more at an event, frankly. Like my sloppy play that I ended up having was punished every single time. And I truly don't think I can say that about another major I've been to. I've experienced it, but just not to that certainty is what I'll call it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, Nicole, you heard me say this multiple times afterwards because, of course, we didn't day two, so we took a very long beach day the next day, and it was awesome.
It was.
I got to swim, I got to tan, and I got to eat some very delicious food.
Mhm.
But of course, we talked obviously about the tournament, the meta, upcoming stuff too, and something that she's heard me say quite a few times was like I felt like I was in an 8-round day two. I had just day two in San Antonio a couple weeks ago. And I gotta say, like getting to day two in San Antonio was worlds easier than getting 422 at Puerto Rico. It was an extremely skilled room. I even went and looked it up later, but 7 out of 8 of my opponents have at least day two'd in another event in Puerto Rico. So I could really feel it whenever I played someone, and even the opponent who hasn't day two'd yet. That opponent I believe went 4-1-3, and I was his only loss. Also, a very skilled player who just hasn't broken through the ceiling, I assume, at this point. Every single opponent just incredibly skilled. I felt punished if I misplayed. I felt like there was, not really much room to screw around and play poorly. And I don't think I played sloppy for the most part. I think there was probably 1 or 2 games where I definitely just entirely screwed up, and I changed how my strategy was going in, knowing the person's deck list a little bit better. But additionally, I also, Nicole had heard me say, like, I was comparing my results from San Antonio and my results from Puerto Rico, and in San Antonio, most of my best of threes were only 2 games. It was either an immediate 2-0 or a 0-2, and only 3 of my games throughout all of San Antonio, including day 2, were 3 games. But in Puerto Rico, 6 out of 8 of those rounds were 3 games, and only 2 of them ended up being either a 2. Well, they were both 2-0s actually. So I never lost 0-2, but it was definitely felt. I was playing 3 games almost every single round that I played, and that just shows how much skill was going into that tournament, how much how much different it is from an actual regional is that the room was small, but it was very, very dense, I should
Mhm.
say.
I think that's a good word for it. It was dense,
It was dense.
very skill dense.
Mhm.
I will also say that I think we experienced firsthand that the meta in different regions is absolutely different, which makes sense. We see that in the Japanese meta. Though, that's definitely impacted by like the difference between best of one, best of three, that format difference. But it was fascinating to me. I saw very little Guardy. We saw zero Gardevoir in Top Cut.
Mhm.
Now, that could be, we could say that's in part to the many Miraidon we saw. But it was very interesting to walk around the room and see the diversity in decks. There was a lot of really wild stuff going on. Round 4, I believe, round 4 or 5, I had somebody playing a Ceruledge Cornerstone box with there was a Dig Drillbur. And the thing is, like, they were. This was round 5 because we were 3-2. Round 6. Either way.
Somewhere in there.
Like we had winning records is the point I'm trying to make. And like there was just so much. I don't know. Some might call it jank. I call it cooking. I call it inspiration. I think there was a lot of inspiration in that room. People trying new things, and it was cool to see. I did win that round. I did end up beating Dig Drillbur. But on that note of talking about different matchups, I met some really cool people too in my games. I got to see a lot of familiar faces too. Some Pennsylvania locals. People I've met at other majors who aren't as local. But there was I mean, again, really cool people I met. I had a really cool interaction during round 8, the final round. I paired into somebody who was from the Dominican Republic, and we were just talking in general, just about the tournament. And pretty early on, he asked, like, do you want to ID? And we were both at that point. Well, I was 4-3, and he was 3-1-3, and so it was a lot safer for him to ID. And ultimately, the math ended up being safe for me, but I didn't know for sure at the time, and I wasn't really feeling especially risky at the time, just because of how my day started. I ended up starting at 0-2. I ended up hitting that Roaring Moon round 1, and then round 2, I hit a Lugia completely through to be a $150. Don't want to talk about it. And so I had to move on and crawl back from 0-2, and I ended up hitting 4-2. Yeah, I hit 4-2, and then lost to go to 4-3. Unfortunately, I lost to Dragapult Dusknoir, which is not the best of matchups, and my opponent definitely knew what they were doing into stall. Also, just not good matchups for me, or I'm sorry, not good draws for me, and into like a matchup that's rougher. That's not a winning formula for Snorlax. But regardless, at that point, my opponent asked to ID in round 8, and I said, if I could guarantee that we would both hit points, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I did not know for sure, and I didn't really want to gamble it. And he was feeling so sure, and not only that, but he was feeling so generous. He said, I'll tell you what, if I win, meaning him, if he won round 1, or game 1 rather, he would write down tie on the match slip. And I said, well, if you want to do that, that's cool. I'm more than okay with that. Again, I wasn't fully understanding the math at the time. He was feeling confident in it, clearly. But he was very kind. We had very good conversations throughout the match. it was interesting. He mentioned that the Dominican Republic, they don't get any majors there. The highest level of competition there is cups. So anytime they want to do a major, they got to hop on an airplane. So that's interesting. Not really very cash money. Hopefully they get majors at some point. But still, I wanted to say that my opponent there in round 8 was very, very cool. Very cool interaction with him, and a lot of kindness, and that was cool. And I want to point out that he was spot on the math. If we ID'd, we would have both got 80 points. That being said, he got 80 points still, and I ended up getting 100. So that was, we take it. I'm glad I played it out. I think that's why my gut was telling me to play it. But still, it was cool. And they were playing a really cool Raging Bolt list. So, anyway, I really enjoyed meeting the people. I really did.
Yeah. Everyone was super nice there. Like, I think I only had like one semi-bad interaction. It was just one of my opponents was getting a little like pissed off that looked like I was gonna win against him, and he was just like slamming down the deck and stuff. But other than that, like I felt like every single opponent was like, very kind, took things seriously as well. Sometimes you get to a regional and you meet some of your opponents and you're just like, you do not care. you don't care about this like I care about this, and it's very clear. And then they get hurt when you win. Those interactions sometimes happen, but I didn't feel that in Puerto Rico, really. I felt like every one of my opponents was very respectful, was very kind, and very fun to play. I had some really fun sets between some people. And I feel like I met just so many cool people. And of course, like you said, I got to see some locals, which was really awesome. One of my locals, Hunter Smith, even got into top 8, which was so cool. And it's just, it's really awesome. Just like you never know who's going to be going to some of these events sometimes, and you get to meet some really cool people. And I think I've met some really, really fun individuals. My round 2 opponent was playing Archaladon, and we had some good sets. And then him and all his friends kept calling me over throughout the tournament to say hi and check up on how I was competing throughout the day and everything. And they even asked how I like my little writing pad, where I got it from, because it's like a mini boogie board. And I just showed them the Amazon page, and they all were taking a picture with it. So it was pretty cool. Everyone was really nice and really friendly. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better event. I really think it was probably one of my favorite events, if not my favorite event, even if we're just going based on just the tournament itself and the people there.
Agreed. I think it definitely was my favorite major I've ever participated in, for sure.
We had a lot of fun too. So.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely visit Puerto Rico if you can. It's my advice. Beach is beautiful.
Yeah, I guess I'll consider it for next season. As I'll say that, at least for me overall, the regionals that I've come into with this specific season, they have been a lot warmer of reception compared to the coldness that was like NAIC 23 for me, 24. But yeah, I mean, how you both described it right now and what you talked about off the recording, it does sound like a place I do want to try. But.
It's awesome. The water's so blue, and the food is delicious. We had no bad meals the whole time.
No, it was
so
we
good.
ate very well, for sure.
Yeah, I got a whole fried fish, and I was like holding up the fish bones for a picture and everything. Like, it was so good. Just all the food delicious. If you like to eat, if you like to swim, if you like to be on the beach, if you like hot weather, Puerto Rico is just the place to be. I'm very much looking forward to hopefully getting into the special event next year, because we had so much fun. We were immediately talking about it on the Uber back to the airport. Just like we were like, we have to go for a week next time.
So it definitely sounds like a good time. Well, I think we should probably start. Speaking of top 8, I feel like we should probably talk about a little bit of what showed up. I guess I did not know about the top 8 for Hunter Smith. We'll give a congratulations to them for what we've seen. As you mentioned, they were very none Guardy placements due to the vast increase of Miraidon. As we can see from our end on top 8, Miraidon has taken 3 of the 5 slots, with Christian Solace taking the first place. And I feel like the only thing that we could take about it is people just teched for the Evo decks for Pult and Drag. Well, Pult and Drag are the same. Yeah. But for Guardy and Pult, it seemed like there was a lot that people have taken advantage of with Miraidon. Since this event, I have seen an uptick in either ladder or Mickey Miraidon usage. The only advice that I could give as a Guardy player is to not give up on the match. as much as I've gone down to 6-1s or 6-2s, you can always have that one lucky Iono. It seems like for a lot of people, at least for the special event, it did not happen. I am interested in the Suriledge, the lone Suriledge that popped up in top 8. We don't have a list for it, at least on my end, I don't.
No, I'm looking
I haven't
for
seen
it.
one.
Which
Yeah.
I did also want to point out, while Guardy didn't make top 8, 9th place was Guardy,
9th place was Guardy. Okay.
piloted by Matt. I'm gonna butcher this. Matt Chuang.
Well, congrats, Matt, for
Yeah.
being the top Guardy player. But we also do see Cloth Terrapagos, piloted by Aaron Curry. Usual. I feel like for Cloth, I feel like it would have been good for obviously the turn 1 donks, especially with a lot of the meta right now being sub 80 HP. But that's just more or less my takeaway.
What's interesting about this cloth list, actually, if you look at it, is they have the Iron Valiant in it. So it looks like they are trying to take advantage of, the donk, obviously. And the Peturunt is in there, of course, because I know there has been some talk before of removing the Peturunt from the cloth list. I don't think that's correct at all, because it's so good to get that. You can get it first. If you can get everything together going first and your opponent has out like a lone Dreepy, we win the game without them having drawn a card yet. So I do think the Peturunt's always good, but the Iron Valiant I find really interesting. It probably fixes a lot of math that has been an issue with Cloth in general. I think that's a really interesting addition into the deck.
I can actually speak to that. When I was running Cloth in the past, that was a hypothetical answer to Guardy, because Terrapagos can hit for 290 with poison. Extra 20 is 310, so you can take out a Guardy EX, and that's one of your worst matchups.
Yeah.
And it also seems that the single copy of Black Belt's training is for any pesky bigger EXs like Dragapult and Charizard, or even I believe Duraludon's 300 300 exact, or not Duraludon, Argaludon.
So I was looking for this Suriledge list. I didn't find it, but the pilot that ran it, Nicole, I think you'll find this interesting. The past 6 events they've gone to before this one, Snorlax. That's all they've run.
That is very interesting.
They have 6, well, at least for day 2s. Like, their Limitless page is Suriledge, Snorlax, 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 Snorlax.
That is for over a year.
Yeah, ever since San Antonio 23.
Wow.
I do also think it's funny if we're going to look at past history. The only Cloth deck in top 8, their previous high placement was Nationals of 2013.
Ooh, yeah, I see that now.
Wow. Good for
Aaron
them,
Curry
honestly.
coming
Good for you,
back.
Aaron
Let's
Curry.
go.
Coming back after a almost 12-year hiatus.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And 13th in the World Championships in 2012 too.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
Oof.
that's crazy, honestly.
All right,
Like,
everyone, watch out for Aaron Curry winning worlds.
yeah, seriously, just coming back swinging and with the cloth, like, that's incredible, honestly.
Absolutely.
I do want to point out, so there's a strong core in this top 8, right? The theme here is Miraidon versus Archaladon. Like that
Mhm.
is the theme here. I do like that we talked about that. That cloth list is really cool. We don't have the Cerule Edge or the Dragapult list. I'm assuming they're pretty standard. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna assume.
Mhm.
So with a core of Miraidon and Archaladon, it kind of begs the question of what is the response after this? We have EUIC, this coming weekend, this Friday.
I mean, you know my
What do
answer
we
to that
think the
is what I've been
response?
working on. I think Raging Bolt's the answer. It cremates both of those decks. And if you can
Does.
figure out the Guardy matchup, you're fine. Into Alt, you're fine into Lugia. Cloth can get a little dicey because of the single prizers, but like you can still take it.
I also
I
think. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's Bolt's time to shine. That's my opinion.
I could totally see it. I think it's definitely got to play into some matchup roulette. You talk about figuring out the Guardy matchup. I think it's figured out and it's a loss. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I kind of agree. Like other than that Guardy matchup, and maybe we're missing something. Maybe somebody out there can fill us in on a matchup we're overlooking. But I kind of agree. Like in the format right now, like I do think, and I'm biased, Snorlax is still pretty real right now. I think it's going to be until rotation. But more Archaladon, as a Snorlax player, I don't like that matchup. So that can kind of keep Snorlax at bay. So you don't have to worry about that, which is just absolutely a loss if the Snorlax player has a pulse into Bolt. That just is a loss for the Bolt player.
It's just easier to dodge a Lax than an Arch.
It
Oh,
really
absolutely,
is.
absolutely. But just respecting, I mean, so Lax right now in the format is 8th place. It's a top 8 deck in the format.
Mhm.
So it does have to be brought up. I'm biased, but
And it's still only going to be
definitely fair.
2% of the room.
Probably,
Yep.
but that just means that when it's being played, it's doing well.
Mhm.
I mean, you could
So
just be me, and you could somehow summon all of the Snorlaxes. I hit 2 in Puerto Rico
yeah,
somehow.
um, but yeah, no, I honestly do think I'm gonna get trashed for this. I think there's merit to a Zard resurgence.
I was just going to say that actually. I think that other than Raging Bolt, Zard's the response.
Mhm.
It's the natural response to Miraidon every single time. It has a good Miraidon matchup. It has a good Archaladon matchup. Archaladon doesn't have the manpower, I guess, the bridge power to take out a Zard. I think it has also a pretty just decent. It's decent into Guardy as well. It's not a complete auto loss. And whenever Miraidon goes down, Guardy comes up. And I think Zard is definitely going to be a hot contender for a lot of people. So I think that Zard's definitely a good response to all of this, but I don't know if it's exactly the right response, if that makes sense.
So I'm glad we walked down this path because I want to give you my pick for EUIC, and I know I'm diverting. I'm diverting a little bit off the
I'm,
path here, but I think this is
mhm.
good
That's
information
perfectly fine.
because this is going to spell out the future for events past EUIC.
I mean, we should all just make our own prediction on the EUIC. So you go
Agreed.
first.
I think Gardevoir's the pick. I think
Still think Guardy's the
because
pick.
Miraidon is getting targeted right now. I mean, so Guardy is like very, very nice into Zard. Guardy also definitely does not mind hitting Archaladon. it's not like as favored as are, but it's totally doable, and a good Guardy player knows how to play through those lines.
Yes.
I mean, so the main threat for Guardy is Miraidon, and I do think that it's going to start dying off. I think Miraidon is a deck that's going to come back in this format. I think it's going to teeter off. I think we see Miraidon have. I'm not saying it won't have high play in day one. It's not going to have a good performance in day two at EUIC. My pick for the winner of EUIC is Gardevoir EX.
So you mentioned cores in Puerto Rico, and I'll tie this together then. But I also see a core in the Puerto Rico top 8, and it's Turbo. You got Ceruledge, you have Cloth, you have Miraidons. I've said this before, you guys have heard me say this before, but I think Turbo's always great in the beginning of the format. I think it just tends to win. So I don't think that, I think now that Miraidon has swept 2 regionals, we're going to have a lot of people, I think, play Miraidon into EUIC. I'm not sure if they're going to be successful into EUIC. I think people are still going to go for Turbo because it is an easy, like Turbo decks are very easy to pick up. You don't have to learn the lines throughout the course of like 5 weeks. You can pick it up, learn it in 2 weeks, lock it in, and play. I think people were waiting for these results just to kind of affirm if their Turbo deck that they've picked is the correct one. I think that there's going to be a lot of Turbo, but something in me, I think our Chaladon is going to do well. I just think our Chaladon's going to do really well again. I think it bodies just the right amount of decks. I think Gardevoir is a great pick, and I would pick it but for you picking it. So I'm going to say our Chaladon. I think our Chaladon is just a good pick. I think it's a slept on deck. I think it's a good deck too. I think it has some really good matchups, especially into a lot of Turbo decks. And I think it can handle its own against a lot of stuff. So with that, I think our Chaladon, if it doesn't win, it's going to be, I think, in top 8.
With or without the Dialga?
I think, that's a good question. I think the Dialga build's good, but maybe I'm a little biased because that's Hunter's build. But I do like, I have an opinion about decks in which I think that since V-Stars exist, you should have a V-Star in your deck, some sort of V-Star capability. I think that any deck is kind of throwing if there isn't a V-Star because it's such a powerful mechanic. So I think with the Dialga, just because getting a second swing immediately without your opponent getting to take a turn is just so powerful. And I think that can just swing the pendulum so much for your tempo and for the games that you play in general.
Yeah.
So I'm a little shocked you didn't say Lugia, to be honest with you.
I played Lugia and it was, unfortunately I didn't play into mirrors, which my deck is very good against the mirror. So, do I think Lugia is a good pick? I do think so. And I do think it's when it hits and when it's consistent and wants to be consistent, it's very good. But of course, some of my losses in Puerto Rico were definitely because the deck just bricked. And that happens. And that's an unfortunate reality to Lugia. I love Lugia. I do think it's a very good pick. I think it has a good matchup into most stuff. It, with Iron Hands, it really does decimate Gardevoir, but I also understand that most decks aren't playing the build I play, which, I was playing a Lightning Energy in there because not only was I playing Raikou, but also I wanted a second swing with Iron Hands with a Thornton. So, against Guardy, playing the Legacy, swinging into Guardy with the Iron Hands, getting 2 prize cards, and then being able to attach a Lightning Thornton into Iron Hands, attach with the Primal Turbos, and get another, you only have 2 prize cards left to take. And I think you could do that with Water Pond if they haven't put down the mana fee yet, or if you have just, killed it with your own Iron Hands. Are they going to commit to getting that again? Do they have the resources to get it again? And if you're playing the rat build, you can kill a Gardevoir with rats. If you are playing Weird Deer, you might be able to kill the Gardevoir with the weird ear instead. There's a lot of lines, but it just depends really if Gardevoir wants to agree with you. Do I think Gardevoir is going to agree? If Miraidon does go down, do I think Lugia is going to agree? I think if Miraidon does actually go down, like you're predicting, I think Lugia is going to have a really good placement then. But I just have a feeling that a lot of people are going to choose Miraidon because we're still like not semi early in the format. I think we're midway in the format now, but there are people holding on to it. And I think the Miraidons are going to block out a lot of the Lugias. It is a hard matchup, regardless of how you play that matchup.
Yeah, I would actually agree with Nicole on this. Even though that I am pretty biased when it comes to Gardevoir, especially Scarlet and Violet Gardevoir. I would say that there will be, in my opinion, a little bit of a downtick for Miraidon. Now, I'm not expecting it to be a complete drop off the face of the planet, though. I would argue that I can agree with the fact that the format is still currently in a little bit of a turbo phase. The one thing that I noticed when it comes to Gardevoir placing well or not is if the decks that they go against are able to swing for a bench. Lugia is a very washy matchup if you don't necessarily play a Manaphy for Wellspring, or if you just draw pretty bad for an Iron Hands. There have been some variants that I have seen where Bidoof Spiritomb does hard lock Lugias at times. But I feel like if a Gardevoir can tech around these abilities to either take 2 prizes or completely disrupt them with bench sniping, I feel that it would be the best deck to play, especially with Miraidon, as I mentioned earlier, that if you play anything related to hand disruption, for me, I would personally choose Unfair Stamp. I feel like those builds are always turbo, but the moment you cut them off of their supply, you can just easily take over. And I feel like specifically Stamp would be the Guardy to win EUIC.
That makes sense.
I mean, should I
vote
just
for Secret Box?
Secret Box?
Yeah, you can make an argument for Secret Box. It gives you everything that you want.
It's a consistency card, which I think is going to make Guardy at its peak performance.
I mean, like, I guess my prediction should just be what I said earlier. I just think it's Bolt. I think one lucky person dodges the Guardy, hits everything else.
It's really hard to hit the not hit the Gardevoir when it's almost 20% of the meta share.
We'll see it though. We'll see it.
Yeah, we'll see somebody's a matchup slip and it's just no Guardies until like
it's happened
finals.
before.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, can happen.
I mean, if I had other predictions that, like, if I want to go a little off the wall, I mean, I've seen a lot of rumblings of Drago coming back, and I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And
if Zard resurges, then I think Drago.
And that's the thing, right? Now, a bunch of people are already thinking, oh, Miraidon keeps winning, let me play Zard. The people thinking one step past that are just going to take Drago. And now you have the good Zard matchup, which is taking out on the Miraidon, which is a semi-bad matchup. You have the good Guardy matchup, because a lot of them are cutting stuff. A lot of the Guardy don't even use Bidoof anymore. They use TM Evo. It has its chance to come back.
I can agree on that. But I've also seen some rumblings. I've noticed in Mickey's that Lost Zone has a little bit of an uptick recently.
It's funny you say that.
I think it's good.
I have a picture. Hold on. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. I have a picture. Pull it up. As this is going to be my other suggestion. It was a picture of NAIC of 2024. This is what it's gonna look like right there. There's the top 8.
Oh,
Lost
Jesus.
Zone, and then a bunch of Guardians.
Lost Zone is just good.
Lost Zone's really good. I feel that it's kind of in the same realm as a lot of the turbo decks. It's just more emphasis on the smaller Pokemon. If you have a Lost Zone player that can set up a really quick Greninja and then a Sableye, like it's pretty bad. I mean, even with the Dragapult being around, there's still not a lot of damage counter like protection on the board outside of like Lugia. So having that big fat 12 just walking around is, I feel like it could be a threat. Obviously they also have access to Pikachu for like the big Argalodon decks. And they have some other swingers like Luna. I'm not quite sure of what the exact lists have changed.
So I played a Lost Zone deck at Puerto Rico, actually. They ran Iron Hands, Blood Moon, Pikachu, and the standard guys that you normally see in Lost Zone. And honestly, I love. Yes, they had Gigas.
Okay.
They had also Gigas in there.
Throwing if they don't have Gigas.
No, the Gigas, but it never came up because I, didn't give them an opportunity to really use it. But it was really, I love Lost Box. I'm going to be honest. Like every time I am off of Lost Box and I play someone else who plays it, I get jealous and I'm just like, I want to play Lost Box. What am I doing? Why am I not playing Lost Box right now? It's such a fun deck. But I do think that it's Turbo Lost Box is just good. It's fast and it has so many options. I was playing it. I was playing Lost Box a little bit on the plane ride home, and the only problem obviously is Badoo. If Badoo just comes in and locks you, and you have no way to attach a psychic energy and then another energy to a comfy and knock that guy out, then you're kind of screwed. I hit a Badoo Frostlass player twice in a row on the ladder, and I was just like, this is unwinnable. I think it's not it. That's the only problem is the Badoo. But if you're a good Lost Box player and you know how to go after the other matchups, I think it's a really good deck. I think it's a good pick. I think it wins a lot of these matchups, and I think that especially if Miraidon's going down, then Lost Box is definitely really good because Iron Hands is not hanging out right now, and that's a good time for Lost Box to really swing back in.
I can definitely agree on the potential that it could have without Iron Hands around. But I also do think that Lost Box might have its last hurrah at EUIC. I feel like with this event, I feel like the format will be set in stone for exactly what would be the better pick. For I believe Vancouver is also in this format.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yes, yeah.
So I feel like Vancouver would be the regional to show exactly what is the perfect build for everything. And let's just see if let's see if any of our predictions are right coming this weekend as of recording. Does anybody have any shout outs for people who are going to EUIC if it's not themselves?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not going.
No, we got 2 team members there, right? We got Brendan and we got Ben. So definitely rooting for them. Expecting big things. So we'll have some updates on them. But yeah.
Although if either of them win, then my prediction's not right, so they're not allowed to win.
One of
That's
mine
true.
is
They're
I
your
would
own
be happy with
teammates.
either of them because one is a deck I like a lot, and one might be playing the one that I was talking about, but who knows?
I sadly do not have any shout outs within the team, but I will give out a shout out to Skydale Cruz
Mhm.
for going out. I'm excited to see what her replacement will be, especially with the deck that she's playing. But yeah, I'm excited for all of us and seeing what will be playing out. As much as I wish I was able to go to EUIC, I had a brief window where I might have been able to go, but that window is far closed now. But what can we do? Now there were. Oh, did you want to say something?
No.
We can just cut that into the sponsor bit. But now that we're talking about the end of Prismatic, I feel like we should talk about the future of what's coming up with the F block rotation. We currently have Journey Together coming up within the end of March. There are some tournaments just walking out of the rotation. Atlanta is the first regional of that format.
Mhm.
We could possibly see changes from of the Champions League that just happened this weekend. And I feel like that's this regional is not regional, but the league is definitely something we should talk about. The winner was a surprise.
Yeah.
But
Wasn't to me.
All right,
as,
Jake.
yeah, as Jake, the resident for alligator lover, I feel like we should definitely see what we've studied with these decks. The top 16 has been posted on Limitless, and we've had a
Yeah.
good spread of a lot of one-ofs, specifically Flareon, Goldengo, Alligator, obviously. Then a cute little Blissey that entered third by Mayasaya Fujimoto. We definitely should breach into that deck, but it seems that the majority of top 16 has started to establish a deck format, which is wall control and Terra Box.
Yeah.
I feel that these two are really good byproducts of the new G block, and I feel that it's definitely, as we've stated before, it's very much our baby format decks that I feel that could easily get improvement, which we could probably discuss later. But is there anyone that could have notes related to what they thought about the top 16?
Yeah, so I definitely, I'll be honest, like, I was unaware of, like, this just general Terra box. Like, I don't know if there were, like, rumblings of this out
I
in
had
the
never seen
community.
it.
But, like, I
Vaguely,
did
but they kept it under wraps pretty well.
Yeah.
that, yeah, and I mean, that makes sense. But, I mean, this Terra box is, definitely kind of interesting. 4/4 Owl Line, 2 Teal Mask, 2 Water Mask. You got the Fan Rotom. We got a 1/1 Farigiraf EX, Pikachu, Lily's Clefairy, which is going to just totally beat up any dragon types, which that's definitely a welcome tech. Badoo, Fez, looks pretty cool. Using the Crystal Ace spec, Area 0, Crispin, all their energy. It's cool.
I've seen some decks specifically. I believe it is Yuda's. Yuda Yoshinoka. They had a 2-line of Mist Energy, which I feel like I don't feel like it was too necessary for this Champions League, but I do feel that more people should pick up on the fact that devolution, if you can't hit them, you can definitely affect them. So I feel like having the Mist Energy in for a later date was definitely effective. But obviously, they got top 6. I'm not the one to judge their deck choice for that. But that was mostly my idea. The Mist Energy is a really good idea, but
Mhm.
it felt too early for the format, as everyone is currently playing with the new toys that we have been received. Our 14th placement by Masatoshi with Zorok box, um, which is definitely something that we have seen kind of advertised around around this set, of where basically you just play nothing but Ents Pokemon. But I will say, I will give a shout out to I believe first name is pronounced Kansi Ishikawa, for running Flareon.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely,
Yep.
definitely the last. Well, it was Flareon, but mostly Eevee box.
Yes.
It was definitely a deck that as someone who plays ladder a lot and seeing this on the regular, I was not expecting, but it seemed to have placed well enough to get top 16. Um, it's a
I've
very
been
it's a very
preaching the
interesting build.
Flareon.
Uh, that the most run is Flareon with 2 Fan Rotoms, running another 4/4 line of Hoot Hoot Noctowl. I feel that Noctowl is going to be all over the place for when it comes to
Yeah.
this format.
Yeah.
Um, almost every single deck in this top 16 list, minus I believe 3, have no Terras. They're all Terra based. So I feel like we're gonna be seeing this almost, I would say almost or as equally as often as Shady Dealings. I feel like it's definitely something that we will be
Yeah.
constantly seeing at every top placement on almost every table we sit at. Um, but with this um with the Terra box like popping up, with I believe the 3 placements it got, the wall control as of right now is a really good counteraction of it. There was a matchup I believe in top 16 of where it really showed the power of how a single little giraffe could take out an entire deck.
Mm-hmm.
I will definitely go into detail on why I have a slight change to Terra box that could completely flip this matchup. Um,
Slightly
but
improved.
I feel like that the wall control is definitely a top pick for early format.
But because it's a top pick for early format, second place is a very scary deck because it destroys
Oh, yeah.
wall control.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, this Goldango Dragapult
Alt
deck
Dango,
is
yeah, wall control can't
very
handle that.
tempting.
Yeah. No.
Clearly, with 2 Dragapult up there, that's why the Mist is in that one of those wall decks. They are, because the Feebas is 30 HP. If somehow they're able to get a good start and just kill the Feebas's, it kind of just falls apart, right?
Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of in the same mentality as I will get to in a little bit, of where that this deck, if it sees one answer, it gives you a different problem.
Mhm.
If you're playing melodic for Dragapult, they're gonna give you Goldango, and they're gonna swap it with Dragapult the moment you're putting up Cornerstone. You'll never have a full 2-turn wall, and that's the biggest issue when it comes to wall. We saw it in Baltimore of this season, of where that wall was taking over almost the entirety of top decks. I believe there were 3 that made at least top 16, if I remember correctly. But the biggest threat for that was Regidrago and Gardevoir, especially. For Gardevoir, if you had a pulse, you won. It was always a 100-0. With Regidrago, if you had a if you were able to work around fighting between V and V Star, it was a pretty favored matchup. It seems that people are taking a bit of a page off of Baltimore's wall control format, of where that there are some decks here that can respond in both ways, such as in Zoroark, of where you can use You could use Darmanitan, even without needing to swing into corner without the abilities that Zoroark has. And I do feel that a lot of these decks do have a tiny bit of jank. Reshiram in Zoroark is probably the biggest threat to it, because as someone who's played Control and Stall in the past, that's the biggest target. Absolutely, it'll benefit the Zoroark player, but it's so bad. Obviously, the issue would be Petulant, but I feel that if you get a few flutes in, because flute is still in rotation, that could definitely be a bad thing. But I feel that, like I said, Wall has a little bit of wiggle room for what could happen. The Dragapult Goldango deck does give people hope that there is a way to work around it.
I think it's a clever workaround, honestly.
Yeah.
The deck has insane draw power between both
Yeah.
Goldango and Dracloak.
Mm-hmm. And I was looking at the other Goldango list, and it obviously is just straight up Goldango, but it does use the Dunsparce engine, which I also found a little interesting because it's hard to ping damage onto the Dunsparces because they can just run away, draw away. And it seems just like a very clean, consistent list, honestly. I like these Goldango lists. The Goldango Dragapult and the straight up Goldango. I think they're just a good response to what they are clearly seeing in the meta over in Japan. I think their response is, well, we can't just attack with Terra Pokemon. Clearly, we have to attack with something that we can put energy on quickly and will swing very hard. And Goldango seems to be the answer to that. And it's clear that that's a good answer, seeing that there's 2 in top 16. So they stuck in there. And, obviously the Feraligatr making its way to top is, just, I don't know. That's also a little wild to me. I would not have, if you had asked me to pick a deck for this Champions League to win it all, I don't think it would have been Feraligatr at all.
Would have been completely out of the question for me.
No.
I do feel like we could start discussing what we would look at for what we would tweak when it comes to these decks, or more or less just talk about how it affected the meta. Is there anyone that wants to take a gander before I start going into my into my wall control argument?
Well, so I'll actually present my wall control argument, not revealing what you're gonna do, but before you. I think what's gonna happen, because it always happens with Japanese metas, is everyone's looking at wall control right now. Everyone's gonna have an answer to it, and it's gonna be a freaking trash tier deck over here, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's already countered. The format hasn't happened yet, and it's already countered. So, as somebody that bought a bunch of Miletics and was looking forward to it, I think the deck's not going to be very good until people disrespect it again. Right now, it's too respected.
Yeah.
What do you propose the solution to it is? You said it's already solved.
Me or Courtney?
Well, you said that it was already solved, Jake.
No, I think it's already going to be countered.
Right. No, and that, what is the counter?
Well, Courtney's going to go into the Terra Box counter. We already mentioned about Zoroark getting around it. Golden Go with Palt's going to get around it. People love both of those decks. People are going to love combining them.
No, that's fair.
It's just going to be straight hostile. You're still going to win games, obviously. It's still a good deck.
Yeah.
But it is going to be hostile. I mean, even the Bolt list runs...
Yeah.
well, not this one. I've seen Bolt list run Cornerstone for it before. The Flareon's running the Leafeon, which I know that's still Terra, but at least it doesn't have an ability, so it can blow through Cornerstone. Stuff like that. There's just everything's going to include an answer or two for it, and it's going to make it a little difficult to run.
Yeah, and Leafeon does have weakness. If I recall correctly, it does. It does have weakness on it. So.
Yeah, water weakness.
For Cornerstone?
No, I'm the Flareon.
The Flareon,
Yeah. Flareon has water weakness, but
yeah, but
I
by
don't
my
think the
melodic, but
Cornerstone
that's
is.
usually
Yeah, but I don't think the Cornerstone is.
Weak to grass.
Yeah.
A Cornerstone is weak to grass.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my
Leafeon's a good funny
tweak.
pick.
I don't even have a tweak to the Feraligatr because my tweak to the Feraligatr list that I was running before all this was basically add melodic, and they did that, so it's already perfect. The tweak to ends is remove all 60 cards and run 60 different cards. And I like the Flareon. I've been running Flareon recently. It's fun. I don't know. But I didn't even see the Zard. It's been hiding there. It's a Zard Terapagos.
Yeah, I do think it's funny that once again, 4/4 Noctowl.
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
Pidgeot, yeah, but with Badoo around, I guess it's easier to
It
just.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's easier to just use the Noctowl instead.
Mm-hmm. Plus, this one is running Maximum Belt, which is such an interesting pick. But hey, they do be swinging hard.
Well,
heavy.
I don't think there's a deck in here that doesn't have an EX, so.
Yeah.
That is true. Max Bell probably becomes actually kind of, half decent.
Yeah. I know for sure every single person on planet Earth before Champions League, we were all clowning on Pokevital A, and it is all over these wall control decks.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. 150 heal base. But the issue that I would want to get on is Terrabox is probably that deck where it's answering to everything in format. Right now, all the lists are missing that wall control hard counter. For the usual counter for wall control is that you just work around it. When there's a wall, you can always walk around a wall. And the issue with Terrabox is that everything you're swinging with is pretty big. It covers every single counter that this deck has. But I feel that I've also tested a little bit, teeny weeny bit with this. I feel that putting in a Cornerstone into this Terrabox will not only give the player a plethora of hard counters when it comes to this format, I also just believe it'll completely flip wall control on its head, because now you have that pivot. You have the ability to walk around the wall. And like just having your opponent putting up a Cornerstone and then immediately one-shotting it with Terapagos and then just bringing up the Cornerstone again. Like it's a very kind of hit and run version of that at that point. But I feel like having Cornerstone in that would complete the trifecta of the Ogre Ponds, which we will. Yeah, I if this does happen, I will eat my words on this, and do some punishment for it. But these are the only 3 Ogre Ponds I will ever see play.
I was just gonna say poor Hearthflame. Hearthflame.
Holy.
He's just, his time will come. Just
I don't think
now.
it will.
It will.
Magma
just,
Basin rotates, so it's impossible to get the fire energy.
Listen, there's gonna be a Zard list that's coping hard, and they find for some reason that that our spicy guy is the reason
that's the Terra
that
they use for the Noctowls.
But even though Charizard's a Terra,
I'll run Firebox in my Terra for Area 0 will be the Hearthflame for for our fire-based Palkia that is Skaladirge.
Gouging Fire will simply just get more support, and then we put in Hearthflame Ogerpon, and we rock and roll, man. That's it. Then we can use the knock towels.
The problem with Hearthflame is like it
Everything.
missed it missed its chance to be good because it does 280, which would be good against all these V stars. The V stars are gone. 280 is no longer that relevant of a number, so it loses its only chance.
It was also just such a cost to get to 280.
I know.
Yeah, he is yeah. Not 4/3 fire energy. It's not good. It's not good, but if he pops up, then you all owe me $5. So which will buy me half a McDonald's meal by the time it happens. So,
I didn't
very
agree to
true.
that.
At least a double cheeseburger.
Yeah, just my lone double cheeseburger. So but I still got to pay the 60 cents afterwards. So.
Right. God, it's just so real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that's my 2 cents on Terrabox. I don't know if anybody else has any idea what they want to do with this format.
So ultimately, I think where I would be at, like if I had to play a tournament tomorrow in this format, I would probably be checking out either the Goldango Dragapult, or I would be checking out Raging Bolt.
I agree.
I think like out tempoing everybody in a fresh format is a very real way to win. Simply put.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I think just those two decks are so good. I think the Raging Bolt's not a Terra. It'll bust through things. I honestly think Raging Bolt's pretty good into the new format, especially with Noctowls. I just think there's a lot of good support for it. I think it's still Skippy, actually. I played against one at a local about a week and a half ago now, and they were just playing a post-rotation Raging Bolt while I was playing Lugia to prep for Puerto Rico, and they won the whole thing. I was like, that's convinced me more than enough that that's a pretty solid deck, honestly. I think they used I think it was Jesse Parker who made the list, and they were singing high praises about it the whole time, and I was just like, honestly, it just seems like a good high tempo deck. It seems to hold its own, and even in a format where F is still very real, it seemed like it was holding its own pretty well. I honestly can't argue against it. I think I'd pick Raging Bolt if I was in the situation that Nicole's presenting.
So kind of like a little bit of a segue off of that, but I think it's a good one. Looking at future events. So we're talking about future format. We can talk about a real event that is planned, and that is Vancouver. EUIC, to my knowledge, that's the event prior to Vancouver.
I believe so.
So EUIC is going to have a lot of impact on Vancouver. If we're saying, hypothetically, top 8 is looking like maybe some Gardevoir, maybe I think Lugia is going to be up there. Some Arch Aladon,
Bolt.
Maybe some Bolt.
Sure, I guess.
Just one lucky Bolt, not more than one.
Have that in that fever dream of yours.
So, how do we? Basically, two-pronged question: can we plan for Vancouver right now, realistically? And if so, how do we? What do we think? What do we do? My thoughts. I personally, I think if you want to just play your own deck, you can plan and just do that. I think if you want to be metagaming, you do have to wait for EUIC. That's going to be such a pivotal event.
Yeah.
But I do suspect that Gardevoir is going to be back in prominence, and that begs the question of, is that Drago's time to shine? Now Badoo's real. Guardy plays Badoo. A lot of Guardy's cutting Badoo.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I personally don't think it's Drago's time to shine. I think it's time for Drago to go take a nap. But
He's been taking a nap.
I do think it's a valid thought. If I were going off of my projected EUIC top 8 meta, I'm looking at Miraidon for Vancouver.
So I'm looking at the regionals right now, and yeah, so we got Vancouver in the same weekend as well as Fortaleza in Brazil. So those were the same weekend as each other. We also have the next weekend, no, maybe 2 weekends after that, we got Stockholm in Sweden. And then we actually have an Australian regional March 29th and 30th, which is in Brisbane. So
Aussie.
we got quite a few regionals still to crack the format with right now. So I do think I think that whatever deck someone has picked for Vancouver at this point, they have room to change it. But their time is getting limited here. We are almost 2 weeks away. It's kind of like you kind of want to lock it in 2 weeks beforehand and run it. And even if EUIC shows a bad meta for your deck, I think you just still run it. It's what you have been practicing, what you're comfortable with. And I think metas always will shift throughout the time. And, with EUIC being just the weekend before Vancouver, I don't think that the meta is going to shift far past whatever it was projected to be this coming weekend anyway. Most people are not going to hop off the deck that they've been prepping with for the past few weeks. Even regardless.
To be clear, the Vancouver is on the 7th, so it's EUIC would be 2 weeks.
Sorry, that's
no, you're good.
My fault.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so 2 weeks out, I do think that most people are not going to jump off of what they think is the best deck. I think the top players they can switch from whatever deck they want at almost a moment's notice. They know the lines for all these decks. But I think when you have your average player, your average competitive player, most of them are practicing the same deck for the past few weeks. I think that I think it's just going to mean that people are going to be punching against Miraidon still, even into Vancouver.
Yeah. I would also say pushing a tiny bit further. After Stockholm, we'll be having as we stated the G block rotation, with Atlanta being the first regional. I myself will be attending the Full Grip 3000 cash tournament. I'm really excited for that. It's the first tournament that I'm going up for just straight cash and just not for a regional. I'm trying to get all my buddies to hop on as well. I have a few I have a few crazy people that would do it in a heartbeat. I'm still waiting for a response on one, but I think that's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be in a Journey Together format as well. So I'm interested to see if I could use that little tad bit of information for Atlanta to see where everything will be bleeding into.
I think it would help, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially due to a lot of people, wanting $3,000. They're gonna put their heart and soul into getting that money. And there was also the following day the $1,000 tournament for GLC. That's also, I believe, in Journey Together format. I'm very interested in seeing where GLC is. I do really love playing GLC, even though that I literally do not have a deck made. But I'm just excited to see where everything will go for that. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about when it comes to Atlanta or anything closer to that?
I mean, I think it's basically kind of what we covered with the Champions League, right? It's looking at the same format. Do I think it's going to be more developed by Atlanta? Probably. More testing time, more people testing. But I think it's going to be a reflection of the Champions League with some alterations to, percentages because, like Jake mentioned, I do think Wall's going to kind of fall off a little bit to start. So I think Atlanta is going to be relatively similar to the Champion Leagues we're seeing right now. If I were playing Atlanta tomorrow, I would be locking in very likely like Raging Bolt, honestly. Again, just out tempo. There's a chance I would test and get into for Alligator. Single prize, doing big numbers, moving damage around with Monkey. It seems pretty good. But I also do think you could just get outpaced by a deck like Raging Bolt, or perhaps Miraidon. So I would be looking to go fast at Atlanta.
I also think like something to consider too is the Champions League is primarily best of one. So I think of deck like for Alligator, if you've never encountered it before, you're gonna lose against it. So I think that's what a big part of why that deck was so successful. Whereas Atlanta and the rest of our regionals are, in TPCI formats are best of three. So I actually don't think this is a good reflection on what we're going to actually see in Atlanta. I think like a lot of Walls reflects like, very top players' knowledge of the format that had been developing in Japan and what's very good in best of one and what can hold its own in best of three when they get up into top cuts and everything. So I think it's going to be, I think Wall's going to fall off. I think that, it's going to be turbo decks. I think these Goldango builds are really going to come in. I think, I think that these decks that kind of try to cheese the win out of best of one are just not going to make it at the end. I think it's going to be a lot of high tempo decks, honestly.
So I personally don't think that for Alligator is not real. It's hitting 280 as a single prizer. 2 energy, which you can Crispin to set up a second one.
I'm not saying it's not real.
Crispin's actually definitely more for my Milotic. But outside of that point, I definitely think that deck's honestly real. I think we're gonna see it do very well in Atlanta. I like to hate on the deck, but truly doing 280 as a single prizer. It's already proven in current online events it can function.
Which are primarily best of one.
Yeah, I don't think best of one is gonna escape the point of 280 as a single prizer. That's
I'm not saying it's not real.
Yeah,
I never said that.
I just don't think that is the explanation. I think that personally, we have a lot of options. We have the Milotic, we have the Mimikyu, we have the Badoo. I think that's perfectly well and good in best of 3. So we'll have to see.
I'm just saying it's going to be crazy when I roll up with Mamoswine.
Oh, I want to play Mamoswine so bad.
The Singular City League 1 it got.
Let's go.
Listen, they just haven't figured it out. I will. Don't worry.
We can crack it. We
believe.
We will all be rolling out TBG with Mamoswine.
Exactly.
Be prepared. We are getting the dub, and it will be with the swine. So.
This is actually all meta manipulation.
Exactly.
Well, while we're meta manipulating, what do we think of the Slow King deck?
Not real.
That's
not real.
We're supposed to manipulate.
It's real.
It's super good.
I'm saying for Alligator's fake and Slow King's real.
I'm saying that anybody with
a
pulse knows that Slow King is not real, and I'm not even going to try and deceive people. So
I'm going to laugh when it wins Atlanta.
It's going to be 6 of them in top 8.
All I'm saying,
the other 2 are Raging Bolt.
All I'm saying right now is I have someone locally who is playing that deck. They've had one game that I've saw them run their deck consistently. Everything else, nothing.
I mean, it
Um,
might be a pile.
It's
You
they
know,
make it a pile. I'll tell you that.
you could just stack the pile in a
Yeah, just learn
specific
to
way.
stack.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, just learn how to
specific.
stack and then you win, right? That's
Exactly.
fine. That's fine to do.
DBG does not endorse stacking.
We also don't endorse fake shuffling.
We also don't endorse fake decks, so
Yeah.
for alligator. No, I'm just kidding. Nicole's gonna
Listen,
get me.
all right.
Jumbo card decks. When can we see
Listen,
Return of
I
Mac?
literally
Ooh,
have in front of me all of my for alligators here. They're ready.
Why do you just have them?
Where's
there?
that cornerstone I have?
Why are you rolling up with unsleeved for alligators
Because
to the podcast?
because I pulled them out of my bulk earlier, so they're actually sitting here in front of me.
They're just hanging out. You just
I just have
got.
Cardi in front of me.
It is the Gators' time, I guess.
I mean, I also have a bunch of random cards in front of me.
I think
this
the
or that.
Gator will make top 64. That's my place.
Heck
my
yeah.
Gator.
It'll be a deck of all time. I think for sure.
I think top 64 is the respect I'll give it.
Yeah. But now that we talk about cards, quick segue. We did today, as of recording this video, we have been given Destined Rivals as our English name, I believe, for the set after Journey Together. This set will contain the Team Rocket set of Japan and the Hearth Flame. I believe that's what it's called. Let me triple check on this. This would be under the glory of Team Rocket and Heatwave Arena. That is going into Japan March 14th and April 18th, respectively. We have already seen a lot of Ethan's cards. I think the Ho-Oh is probably the most beautiful card that has been revealed so far of the new era of trainer cards. I'm interested to see how they'll do Giovanni's Mewtwo. And they're also seeming to do Team Rocket members Pokemon. The teasing of the GamesCon cards include a Rattata, Arbok, and Coughing, and Murkrow. I have an interesting feeling that we might get a Team Rocket Pokeball back.
That could be kind of cool.
I feel like they could also implement that with N, of where that they could do like a Team Plasma run, because we are maybe at one point expecting a remake of Black and White at one point in time in the near future. So I wouldn't be surprised if they also do Team Plasma. Team Plasma's art cards were also really pretty back in the day. That blue border was always just
It's so nice.
It was just so pretty.
Yeah, it's so pretty. It's had beautiful cards. I was Prism too.
No Prism.
Prism.
Prism was Sun and Moon.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually.
Yeah. Team Plasma was Black and White.
Yeah, you're right.
I would say probably to no one's shock, and probably to the majority of people's opinion, we should have had these type of trainer Pokemon over Terras. The Terra ability is so insequential until it hits. We always have that forgetful damage hit to a Terra, and be like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I feel like these trainer Pokemon are significantly more healthier for the format.
Well, to give the TCG some sort of credit, they kind of have to follow the gimmick of the video games in some way to try to pull some people into the game.
They gotta make that sweet money.
They have to make money somehow from the biggest franchise in the whole world. But
yeah,
I do agree. I think trainer Pokemon has been long overdue, and I think it's going to be so fun. I'm actually very excited to try some of these decks. I really like the Ethan's deck a lot. Obviously, in Journey Together, we're getting Hop's deck, which is going to be very good. But in this newer set, I just think Ethan's deck is going to be fun, and I have been thinking about it a lot. Maybe it's not going to actually pan out to be very good, but it's fun to see, just these kind of decks pop up and provide a lot of like cool new ideas to what you can do to the game.
Yeah.
So So cool. And the full arts have all been beautiful so far that have been revealed. I love all of them. So
I will say I will have one beef with this new set, and that is all of Cynthia's cards. If you were around for the format of Lux Chomp, that icon is the exact same
is
as it was in 2009.
laziness. Why
That's all I'll
change?
say.
You know what? Why fix what's not broken though?
Exactly.
It's fine. You know, it's fine. It's high res, right?
From the pictures we've seen, not really.
My problem actually is that Steven has shitty cards. So am I allowed to say that shit?
Well, I think for today and this week, I feel like we covered everything that's of the news. I feel like next time we could definitely talk a bit more uniquely. We do have EUIC coming up. Most likely will be talked about. I would love to hear what our teammates and friends did at the tournament, and just get a new glimpse of Prismatic Evolution in its sunset time, and we'll look into the future of how we're going to wrap up F block and go into the beautiful Dree. But I feel like that's everything. Does anyone else have anything wonderful to say to close our podcast, our very first?
Well, I think it's I really enjoyed, being able to do this, talk about all the upcoming meta changes that we expect, and talk about our Puerto Rico performance. I think this will be a
Yeah.
good
Thank you
thing
for
for us,
listening. We
so,
appreciate it. Support Team BG.
yeah.
Of course. Everyone's socials will be in the description, as any YouTube video should. But yeah, if that's all from everybody, we're signing out.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.